So, namaskar everyone. My name is Shakil. I welcome you all to this webinar series, Meaningful Living, on behalf of Mind Mingle. And thank you very much for joining us on time. So, today's topic is going to be inviting stress into meaningful living. So, we have, along with Gopalan sir, three other panelists today and very special guest, Dr. E. Prasad Rao. I'll just give small introduction of our panelists and then we will start the talk directly. So Dr. Prasad Rao has been into school education for last 4 decades, deeply interested and engaged in bringing about benchmark changes in education and the way students learn. He is a staunch believer and supporter of democratizing education and learning at the local level, endeavoring to facilitate a proactive and self-owned driven learning ecosystem. Have studied educational system in across the country and various other countries like Finland, New Zealand, Singapore. And he has recruited and trained few thousand teachers and school leaders, highly focused and committed, transparent and value ingrained individual trying to engineer education in a small way. Then we have Dr. Rajaram Kurliji. Rajaram ji is an MTech and PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, a tech educator, a volunteer at the Study Center KFI Bangalore, and the unmanifest understanding of the Krishnamurti teaching through voluntary activities centered around translating the teachings into Kannada manifest into a pro bono learning center for the socio-economically and educationally challenged youth. The learning center where the flowering in goodness and awakening of intelligence for witness in abundance inspired many of social enterprises. The journey is continuing to find order in the realm of exploring what is right education and right livelihood essential to meet life in the emerging post-pandemic new world. Then we have Mr. Arvind Seshadri ji. Arvind ji is a mechanical engineer by trade, born and raised in Bangalore. He studied in the US and worked there for a bit before coming back to Bangalore 15 years ago. He studied at the Valley School where Gopalan sir still teaches, and he is still actively involved in teaching basketball, being an active part of the Alumni Association. He enjoys sports, music, teaching, and traveling. He's one of the founder trustees of an NGO called Iksha Foundation that helps children with eye cancer, which has been in existence for 11 years now and has helped over 170 children with their treatment and education. So I will request Gopalan sir to initiate the talk, and probably he will speak for 15-20 minutes, and then other panelists will join in and initiate the dialogue. Those who are watching us on YouTube, in case you have any question, you can keep commenting, and when we have like last 15 minutes, we will start taking your questions as well. So over to you, Gopalan sir.
So, namaste everybody. My apologies for not being able to show you a namaskar. The topic for today is inviting stress into living, learning and livelihood. And I'm talking here live with a real experience of what stress is, because at 5:45, our cable internet went down. And I have to connect my laptop through a phone, and we don't get the network inside. So I'm walking around outside the house with my laptop connected through the phone. And since you wouldn't understand if you live in a city, in this outside, the 6 o'clock is the time when mosquitoes come out in their hordes. You can't sit for a minute. So this is a challenge. I mean, would I get stressed because of this? Because there's an event happening, it's being live streamed on YouTube. I'm getting WhatsApp after WhatsApp. Are you logging in? Right? And there's nothing I can do about it. So starting from there, I would like to first ask, what is stress? The dictionary defines stress as pressure or tension exerted in some form. So in our day-to-day understanding and language, stress is equated with pressure or tension. Now, a stressful incident can make the heart pound and breathing quicken, muscles tense, and beads of sweat appear. This combination of reactions to stress is known as the fight or flight response, because it evolved as a survival mechanism enabling people and other mammals to react quickly to life threatening situations. Now, the human brain has evolved from the animal brain, and it has within it the fight or flight response. This is even justified as necessary from time to time to protect one for in physical dangers, especially say when you are crossing the street and there's a fast moving vehicle coming. You need to be able to quickly respond without even thinking, and therefore the fight or flight response becomes necessary even for day to day survival. Has this become a habit, a deeply ingrained habit that is so automatic that we respond in this way to any threat, even if the threat is an imagined threat? So, for example, in this world of coronavirus, the most serious cases, why did they have to be hospitalized? They had an overactive immune response which produced a cytokine storm. So it was just an overreaction of the body's defense mechanism, which became life threatening. So the key question, it seems to me, is tension harmful? Is it, or does it lead to stress? We have always assumed it to be so. And this is where I would like to bring out the key point of what I'm trying to say today. The human being is a composite of body, mind, and of course the life energy. Now, they can't really be separated. Unless they are all together, it's not a human being. But still, within this limitation of that you cannot separate it, the body works in one way, the mind works in a completely different way. And is it that our problem that we think both work in the same way? This is what I would like to explore. So, when we say stand to attention or listen attentively, what happens to our body? It immediately goes on alert, which is all the muscles become tensed, right? So, is this tension stress? Now, the body is made up 75% of muscles, and the essential state of every muscle is a binary situation. Either it is relaxed or it is tensed. Now, if you take the example of the human arm, there is the biceps and the triceps. When we want to fold the arm, bend the arm, the biceps stretch, the triceps relax. When we want to straighten the arm, the triceps stretch and the biceps relax. So one of the two of them has to be stretched. It's the same way with the leg. There we have the muscles of the hamstrings and the quadriceps. So the most restful pose that we know for the body is the Shavasana. In the Shavasana, you are completely relaxed. But when we are completely relaxed, the triceps is stretched. That's why the arm is straight. Similarly, the quadriceps is stretched. That's why the legs are straight. So, is tensing of the muscle alone stress? So, another example is the heart. The heart is a different kind of a muscle. It's entirely made of muscle. It contracts to pump and relaxes to fill in blood again. And it pumps some 3 billion times in a human's lifetime. Is pumping blood by the heart stress? So, you can take the example of a tiger ready to jump, or a snake ready to strike, or if you have a pet like a cat, you may have seen it stalking sparrows in the garden. And it's all tensed and agile and it's stealthily creeping, and suddenly the sparrow flies away. The cat doesn't get worked up, it just relaxes. It even lies down and stretches itself. You don't see stress in the face of that cat. So mere stretching of the body is not stress. In fact, repetitive stretching, if it is not overdone, is imperative to keep the body healthy. That's what exercise is all about. So, what is the place of repetitive practice? At least we call it repetitive practice. What is the place of practice? Is all practice repetitive? About 30 years ago, the famous violinist Dr. L. Subramaniam, he lived here on the campus and he lived next door to us. His son Ambi, the violinist, was in the first standard at that time. So we used to watch Dr. Subramaniam. See, he had his reputation, and he was a performer of tremendous magnitude. But every morning at 4 o'clock, he would take his violin, and for 1 hour he would practice. And when we sat with him, he said, "This practice is necessary. It doesn't matter how many times you have done it." So, regular stretching, regular exercise is required. Overdoing it, of course, causes problems. That we understand. So, is all tension stress, or tension mismanaged, not properly understood, brings stress? Now, you take the example of a musical instrument. If the wire of the musical instrument is not tuned properly, that is, it is not tensed, it cannot produce a sound. If it is too tight, it will not produce the right note. It requires to have the right tension, which is the right stretching. So, is it that intelligent living requires the body to be similarly tuned and to have the right tension? This is something that I think we need to look at very carefully, because it means that there is tremendous value in having the right posture when you are doing something. So, when we are studying, why do you sit straight? See, we have only been told sit straight and study. We haven't been told why. But if you see, the posture of sitting straight with your back straight brings in a certain attention, a state of attention, which doesn't come if you're flopped out slouching on the bed. So posture becomes extremely important. It's not regimentation. It's the posture is required for that body to have that complete capability that it has. So that is not stress. Then now the conditions for stress for the mind are something very, very different. Man has this unique trait that every time he misses a goal or he makes a mistake, it is followed by discussion, rumination, analysis. Why does a human being always have to do this rumination and this analysis? Uh, the logical answer would be so that we learn from our mistakes, right? And here I would like you to consider this very carefully, because you don't have to agree with me. Do you learn from a mistake through the analysis, or the learning from the mistake happens at the moment when you make the mistake? I'm suggesting at the moment when you make the mistake, you already know you have made a mistake, you know what is the error. You are throwing the ball, you're aiming for that basketball net. Even as you throw it, you know that throw was not right. It didn't have the right angle or the right aim or didn't have the right force. You know it. Now, what is the point of having a discussion afterwards? You should have had this posture. This is how you should have stood. This is how you should have thrown the ball. What is the point of that? What learning does that bring? Does it bring any learning at all? Or even the possibility that there will be this analysis causes stress. The fear that I may make a mistake, I may not live up to expectations, right? So why do we make this process of analysis in the business and corporate world? You have regular meetings to analyze. right? So failure analysis becomes extremely important. Isn't the objective of that that we don't want mistakes to be made? Because we say mistake is a waste of time, waste of resource. So we would like that we don't make mistakes. But do we see that the very making of the mistake is the route to learning? There is no second way to learn. So only a machine has a downtime which has a commercial value. A human being doesn't have a downtime, it's a learning time all the time. And that brings us to a different question. What is rhythm? The definition of rhythm is movement marked by the regulated succession of strong and weak elements or of opposite or different conditions. Now, rhythm exists in muscles pumping the heart. Rhythm exists in washing utensils. Rhythm exists in sweeping the floor. When that rhythm is there, there is no stress. So, when we say do what you love and love what you do, are we really saying find the rhythm in that job and be in sync with that rhythm? So, the rhythm is all that matters. Now, the rhythm is always at the level of the individual and it is never constant. It fluctuates through the day, it fluctuates with age, which means can we continuously and constantly be watchful and aware to ask, am I in rhythm? Right? Can I learn to work in sync with that rhythm? This is not easy because when we work with in any organization with somebody else, we are expected to conform, not work to our rhythm. Pace is set by the organization and we are asked to conform. And conformity must bring stress. So, is the key to being happy, only being in sync with one's rhythm? And do we give importance to that in our lives? That's my question. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm moving around a lot because I'm sitting outside trying to cope with mosquitoes. So please forgive me for that. Light is also bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it is open for the panel for the discussion. You can unmute yourself and start the dialogue. And Naveen, you can make the grid view.
Yeah. Shall I, Shakil?
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Shakil and Naveen, and good evening, Mr. Gopalan, Mr. Dr. Uh, Raj, and then Arvind, and all those who are watching live. First, let me offer my pranams to all gurus today on the occasion of Guru Purnima Day. This lineage of gurus that have actually propelled education across generations, across centuries and millennia, that shall remain and will continue to remain as one of the forces to reckon with, to sustain the society living in life. So Mr. Gopalan, my friend, has come out with a very interesting presentation and talking about rhythm. Now I think he has given certain physiological, psychological, emotional, overview of what you call this kind of a stress. What do you call that stress? Is it tension or is it anxiety? Some people, psychologists call it anxiety disorder. And there are so many such terminologies that are coined by the psychologists. When we talk about rhythm, Mr. Gopalan raised about, do we have a rhythm of our life? Because We are all every individual is a sum total of the, whatever you call it, the DNA or the impressions of the entire universe, or the people living now lived in the past, maybe hundreds and thousands of years ago. So we are carrying this from generations and generations. But when you come to this 21st century, if we ask a question ourselves, do we follow a rhythm in our life, especially in education at the school level? The schools do not cater to all the dimensions of knowledge, like physiological implications, psychological implications, and emotionality. And of course, then you come to spiritual, this thing. So we normally don't, address all those things together. We address one, leave the other. We over address cognitive element and almost not address the emotionality aspect. So there is a kind of a miss. So when we miss that kind of a thing, when there is no integration, the integration of the body, the integration of the mind, what you call this intelligence, the integration of the heart, and then of course the implication of the soul, then I don't think there will be a rhythm. This is point number one. When you are able to integrate those things through your thought, through your action, maybe in learning, as Gopalan sir said, maybe in business, maybe in any activity, a scientific activity, or technological activity, or a cultural activity, or social activity, or activity for the self. And I think when this integration takes place, there shall definitely be rhythm in one's own being. Certainly there will be. Often I have seen in people, even including me, what happens is we are psychologically upset, and then it has got its own impact on body, and that part of body gets actually overworked up, and probably you may end up in hospital for treatment, for cure, whatever it is. Sometimes it may have its own heavy pounding on the heart, and that leads to a lot of emotional disturbances. So we all go through all those things. And the reason for this is, I think, when you take the face value of that, we do miss the rhythm of our life. And when I say the rhythm of our life, then we are not able to have the integrated view of or integrated application of the mind, the body, the heart, and of course the soul. So that how does that integration take place? That integration to take place in a child, in the pre-primary classes, in the primary classes, secondary, adults, youth, whatever you call it, even the old. Is that integration a possibility? And today, if you look at people, not only because of Corona, we human beings now undergo a lot of stress. There is anxiety disorder everywhere, in every family, in every person, in every individual. And because now we are driven by memory. Every day's effort, today's activity is driven by memory, and that memory also sometimes, rather most of the times, cause stress. And this stress is not strange, it is there in everyone. And if you say that there should not be stress, I don't think it is the right statement. Stress is a part and parcel of every living human being. A learning child, a learning adult, or earning human being, whoever it is, the stress is a part of that. But then when the stress arrives in our mind, our heart, our body, or in all these beings, what is the response to the stress is the most important part of education than having stress or having no stress. If somebody says that you cannot have a stress, probably that is not the statement of the truth. But most unfortunately, we, as you said, Gopalan sir said, in the organizations, in institutions, we actually follow. We follow. When you follow something, you miss the flow. if you want to have a flow, the dynamism, the dynamics of functioning, that flow, that focus, that kind of a thing, definitely then you will find that kind of a rhythm. Rhythm is nothing but a beautiful music. Even when we breathe in and breathe out, there is rhythm. That rhythm, you will be able to feel that, provided you just focus on your breath. It's not an intentional breath, it's a natural breath that goes in and out. And if you just listen to that, you will have a beautiful rhythm to really feel for it. This is, I think, point number one. So my understanding and conjecture is that stress will be there. It could be because of the memory of our experience of the past, because it's important to remember that past, may be there, but past, we cannot become victims of the past, because some relationship was not good. Then you cannot say that that cannot be continued till now and tomorrow. That's number one. And then secondly, past can be there, but then do you want to become, you can remember the past, but you can't become a victim of the past. I have seen thousands of people becoming victims of the past. It happened, therefore I can't change it. If you accept internally, if your internal dynamics accept that it happened, therefore I cannot change it, I have to accept, and that is the truth, nothing else. Once you come to that kind of understanding in the present, probably the stress levels will start receding very, very, well. And the more you do that, the more you believe in the present moment energy, the present moment action, the present moment observation, the present moment understanding. And I think you understand as it is, you take as it is, without looking at from colored eyes, from the prism of the past. Look at that, accept it, don't rebel against it, though it may be a little painful. Then I think you are out of the stress. Certainly you're out of the stress. So I think there's much more to say. My point is to getting into rhythm of the body, of the mind, the psyche, and the heart. These three things, at least initially. Later on, the kind of a spiritual touch or content or spiritual life can add it. So that will be the most important thing. And before I actually, it may be continued, before I give it back to Shakil, it is also proved that chronic psychological disorders for quite some time in a human being always ages that particular human being very faster. So we have to see whether I am allowing my psychological, whatever some people call it depression, some people call it tension, some people call it anxiety, some people call it borderline personality. There are so many such things are there. If you allow that kind of a psychological pain to continue to harm you, then I think you are going to age very, very soon. So my point is very simple, sir, that you need to get back your rhythm of your life. That is in your hands, not in the circumstances, not in the society, not in the nature. It is there very much within you. Shakil, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Would you like to add something, Arvindji or Rajaram, sir?
Yeah, sure. Am I audible clearly?
Yeah. Very.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So this living, learning, and livelihood, obviously covers virtually every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
And looking at particularly this, how stress gets invited or how we invite stress, it triggers, lots of explorations we have been doing together in the Valley School and outside and so on. When Gopalan sir brought it down to, are we living in a rhythm? There is a lot we can talk about it from, what scientific community has found out, and as well as the so-called the inner explorations and inner engineering discipline has found out about the rhythm. Prasad Rao brought about, the breathing and so on and so forth. But looking at this whole thing as a phenomena, what occurred to me that we could be looking at is the living, learning, and livelihood for an individual versus for the whole cohort of people, as in the society, the family, the society, the organization. Is that the root cause of this stress? To me, it does look like that. Each individual goes through his own life cycle. There's a different rhythm to that. And one of the scientific, discipline is suggesting there is a thing called biorhythm. Okay, they call it biorhythm. Every individual from the day he takes birth, the cycle start, and with different periodicity, everyone goes through. There is different periodicity to your physical energy, emotional energy, and intellectual energy. And sometimes 2 out of 3 are in sync. And when they are in sync, you are actually energized to do certain kind of activities more efficiently than other kind of activities. Just for example, when physical and emotional energies are in sync and on a high, mastery is something that comes naturally. Whereas when the physical and emotional together is probably the passion. Similarly, intellectual and emotional energies on a high in sync would enable certain kind of learning better than other things, and so on. So there are that kind of exploration in our learning center. We have done that kind of. When people get into conflict, the same two people are seen often, extremely happy and free and so on, and other times they are in conflict. We are able to relate that to this kind of, out of sync of, their emotional energies and things. We should have fun with that. But more than that, if you look at this question of when we say stress is getting invited in different circumstances of living, learning, and livelihood, what is unsaid is it is in an environment or in the context of an organization. So what do these organizations exist for? It is made up of individuals, but we have made it a tradition that everything has to be organized for the sake of masses. It is for mass demand of learning. This whole education system, institutionalizing of education, organizing, and then finally you have exams, and everything one is supposed to learn is vertically and horizontally divided. There are innumerable divisions, and finally in a day there are 8 periods, and you know what happens after that. There are enough, has been said about what is not correct. There seems to be more things which are not right about this education. The net effect being a child does not get enough time to even understand what it is supposed to learn. It is time. Of every 1 hour, different teacher comes. So the comprehension, the synthesis of the knowledge never happens, right? So this is primarily because whatever was the need for the child to come into the school and whatever was the need to learn certain disciplines, because the learning is organized into institution, and for the sake of that organized existence of the learning institution, things have to be divided vertically, horizontally by time, and children have to keep on moving. Does it serve the original intent of organizing? Nobody has an answer to that. Rather, we would avoid that question. But the actual answer everybody knows, right from education minister to the last mile teacher, and of course the parents, that there is something fundamentally wrong with that. If the intent was learning, why don't you allow child to discover what it wants to learn, how exactly it wants to learn, which has a lot to do with the biorhythm or the life cycle of the child itself. Whereas livelihood, the next stage of why education is organized like this is for mass need of producing specialists and so on and so forth. And that is the feeder. That's a factory model that feeds to all other professional governance, all kind of organization. All of those organizations do exist mainly for the mass purposes. Whereas the individuals who are supposed to perform various roles and responsibility there, what does it mean to them? That I, as an individual versus this organizational objective, which has a timetable, which has objectives and goals, then the whole lot of thing, Gopalan brought out happens automatically. There are objectives, there are targets, there are timelines. And then people have come in to fill the roles without sufficient learning. There are a whole lot of organizational studies which have all these, aspects of organization discovered. Apparently, across the world, over the entire history of organized way of running the society, private, public, small, big organizations will have a vision, mission, objective statements by which they are constituted, but not more than 5% of the individuals inside the organization are aligned with the vision, mission, objective of the organization. And next 15% who have to work with them will somehow manage, and 80%, not less, are actively disengaged from vision, mission, and objective. So, why do you need so many people? Because it's an organization. The organization keeps on growing. You need to have more and more people, and so on and so forth. So the whole design of organizations seem to be, having this, the stress creation as its DNA, rather than, whatever was the intent of the organization. We have taken it for granted. So therefore, there are a lot of parallel processes that happen, soft skills learning, enabling individuals for various other, making them re-energize, stress. In fact, there is an official study done. There are PhDs done on, what they call as SAD, stress, anxiety, and depression among Indian IT workers. There's a PhD thesis done in California University, and so on. And now you look at this whole pandemic, how it originated, how it is propagated, how it is managed. Every week, the narrative keeps on changing. Where is the origin of all of this? Origin of all this confusion, the resulting stress, anxiety, depression, and deaths are happening because of ignorance. It's so obvious. And the origin of this and the maintenance of the state is going on through very well organized institutions, healthcare, governance, and all the other things in between. And of course, education and learning is affected by that seriously. So if you look at that, there is this rhythm at individual level, and there is a life cycle an individual goes through. But all the needs of living, learning, and livelihood have been organized for the mass demand of the individuals themselves. But once it is organized and it becomes bigger and bigger to cater to the growing, mass demand, more and more so-called bureaucracy or discipline that comes in, we think it is scientific. But it is because of this fundamental conflict between the organizational processes and the need to have things divided vertically, horizontally, and in time with specific goals versus the individual's rhythm. Just simply the living, what we call as living. That conflict is, it seems like it is never going to end. So we are having this discussion. It looks to me like that. Whereas today, when an individual is supposed to, or is educated and pushed to assimilate with all of these organizational processes, you know what is talked about. It's not individual's life cycle. You have customer life cycle. There are product life cycle. There are organization life cycle, and so on. So the individual life cycle is supposed to be assimilated and get adjusted to, trained and skilled to be in sync with these other life cycles, which are entirely creation of the intellect and the organization of these intellect-driven, processes. There lies the root of this stress, that is invited in our daily living, right down to the classrooms when it comes to learning, and right down to every task we are supposed to do in any organization, or even if it is in an unorganized sector. So to me, therefore, the question is for the individual. What should the individual do? If this is the way the organized everything is going to work forever, and organization cannot actually care for the individual's rhythm, what is an individual supposed to do? Can we even make an individual aware of, the root causes of this stress, which is getting into every walk of our life? That is my question to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lots of learning for me. in this session. I think Gopalan uncle had a really nice word, rhythm, that I think is stuck in my mind. And I was trying to think about things that are in rhythm. When we sleep, I think our breathing is most in rhythm. There are three different kinds of breathing. One, you breathe from just your shoulder, which is very shallow, which usually happens when you're stressed. And there's breathing from the chest, which is a little more natural. But breathing from the stomach, this is through a yoga teacher that I've been talking to, is where you are able to relax a lot more. And that rhythm is a lot more deep drawn. So breathing is one of the places where we see rhythm in our life. Walking or just, exercising regularly is another place. And I think music, where there's this tala, you just constantly, it's just telling you the same thing over and over again. And for me personally, music has been the thing that gives me most peace. Is the place that I go to when I am stressed. And that is something that has always helped me. Initially, we talked about tension and stress. So I think tension, like Gopalan uncle was talking about, your muscles and things like that, is more of a physical thing. Whereas stress is more of an emotional thing or something to do with your mind. So, like Prasad Rao sir was saying, he mentioned that stress is necessary. And I think tension and pressure are necessary. I don't know if stress is necessary. And there's a thin line between the two, whether it is stress or whether it's tension that we have. That pressure of having to do something, I think, is something that will make people go further in life, do more. But stress is what brings you down. It is what curtails you from reaching your the possibilities that you can reach. Again, Gopalan uncle, you talked about basketball and whether we need do we already learn from the mistakes itself, or do we need to analyze and do this? I think teaching helps in teaching in a more, if we go back long time where we had the gurukulas and things like that. I think that kind of teaching is where they allowed you to explore, something that we do at the Valley also. Ask questions. You're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to be free. You're asked to explore. You're asked to just spend time with yourself. And I think that's very essential. One of your earlier sessions also, you talked about trying to understand what it is that you like to do, and doing that at your job for your livelihood is what will reduce your stress. So me personally, I've always liked to build things. It was jigsaw puzzles initially as a kid. It was Lego pieces. Then there was Meccano sets. And then the Lego came up with these motors and these pneumatic things. And even yesterday when I went into work, I was actually fiddling around with things in the lab at my office. I have immense pleasure in actually spending time away from my computer and actually getting my hands dirty. So that's what I still do. So I think with respect to learning, I think being allowed to explore and find what one likes and to do things at their own pace. Why is it that in 10 years, you have to go from first standard to 10th standard? Someone might want to finish it in 6 years. Someone might want to take 12 years. I've had cousins who said, yeah, I like 5th standard a lot, so I did it twice. Instead of saying that I failed in 5th standard, he would twist it around and he say, yeah, I liked it a lot, so I did it twice. But I think and different people have different maturity levels, different absorption capabilities. So the reason why we have doctors is because the human body is extremely complex, and we are not able to just diagnose our symptoms and figure out what the problem is. Similarly, in education, there is going to be a different pace, a different interest, and a different capacity for each child to learn. So why do we have this fixed box that you go in, you sit there, you sit in the third row in the second column, we read out your attendance, we want to make sure. So, and it's education. I've seen TED Talks and stuff talking about education being, the current education system is basically built to manufacture engineers and accountants and people like that, whereas it's not. I don't know how far our education system is actually tuned to allow people to explore and do the things that they want. And so way down the line, when you're 30, 40 years, you start thinking about, why am I doing what I'm doing, instead of trying to figure that out in the learning part of it. And that is what starts potentially causing stress in you. So with respect to my thoughts on what you can do to reduce stress, it is finding rhythm. Maybe music at a certain time, and it's different for every person. Maybe music in the morning helps someone. Maybe music in the morning just slows someone down. Maybe an exercise in the evening is what works for someone. Maybe a small little yoga session in the morning helps someone else. Moderation in everything. I think the other three people in the panel talked about excessiveness, which can lead to stress. So just moderation of everything, I think, is another thing that can reduce stress. And I think Dr. Rajaram talked about exams and stuff like that. So or thinking about the past, memories and stuff. So if we can somehow figure out, it's not easy, if we can somehow live in the now, because what is the past has already gone and you can't change the past. I think we all know. And what is the future is what we have to define. So if you think too much about the future, how am I going to buy an apartment and pay that 90 lakhs off in the next 17 years or whatever? It'll happen. So if we can live in the now and figure out what it is that we want to do and actually spend our energy on that, I think we get the biggest bang for our buck, and life is just immensely pleasurable. It is difficult to do, but I think, if we can aim towards that, that's the way to go forward.
Yes, Gopalan sir, do you want to answer or share your perspective? We are left with 7 minutes now.
Yeah. See, I think this is where mythology, stories from the past have a lot of meaning. I've heard the story. Let me say it again. That's the Zen parable where the rich American tourist comes around and sees a fisherman sitting under a tree, not doing anything. And he says, look, why are you wasting your time? There's a river down there. Why don't you catch some fish? And the fisherman looks at him and says, okay, I catch a fish. Then what? He says, then you go sell it in the market. You make some money. You'll make a profit. Next day you catch more fish. Then you get a boat. You get bigger nets. You employ people. You get much. You set up a big corporation for yourself. And he says, then what? He says, then you take a vacation, go to a quiet place and relax. He says, that's what I'm doing now. I think there is tremendous meaning in that story. It connects up to what Arvind was talking about. Look, this is a tremendously precious opportunity we have, a living life. You have to live this moment to the fullest, not work for some moment in the future where we will enjoy ourselves. If this minute I have not enjoyed, I wasted it. There's no assurance there is even the next minute. So what does it mean to live every moment to the fullest? And there, Arvind, I'm not completely sure that one can look for rhythm in things that I love to do, music, etc. Yes, certainly one must do that. But can I find the rhythm in everything that I have to do? I have responsibilities. As a father, as a worker, I have responsibilities. Is carrying out a responsibility a non-rhythmic process? Or can I find the rhythm in that? But we also have to accept the whole world works against you. because they demand you conform. And that is where I would like to respond to Dr. Rajaram. See, if we give young people this opportunity to discover, explore in the younger ages, they are not so ready to conform when they become older. And therefore, when the choice is given to them that, look, here is a great job, sign up for it, you get all this, they say, well, I don't want a collar around my neck, whatever be the reward. I think that kind of a fire has to come in the young person. And only an education which allows you to explore, make mistakes, find out different things. In the process, perhaps you discover what you love to do. That may do it. Definitely not this 10 plus 2 plus 3 or whatever formula you have. That's to produce workers. Yes.
Yeah, I think Mr. Gopalan, I would like to add a couple of things. Actually, Dr. Rajaram was talking about what should individual do. When we look at these things, I think a couple of interesting things actually knock my brain right now. Number one is look at our relationship quotient. We are getting that stress in our relationships at home, in the family, in the community, in the school. This is one major hazard why stress is being generated. Husband and wife, son and father, teacher and child, whatever you call that. So this we are not able to figure it out. If we don't figure it out, every day we have to live a very artificial life. We cannot lead a very natural life with full of flair. That will be missing. So my thing is to fix your relationship quotient, number one. Number two, please check your interpersonal meter. What is your interpersonal meter? Is it healthy? Is it strong? If not, repair it immediately, and then you see a beautiful thing will start happening in everyone's life. That kind of interrelationship connect is the most important thing. Because somebody says, imagine as though today is the first day of the rest of your life. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Whatever is gone is gone. So why don't you start it that way? So when you take the kids, when you take in the schools nowadays, what is happening? You talked about the kids, Dr. Rajaram and then Arvind also. They say anxiety sabotages academic performance of the child also. There's a lot of force on the kid. Even actually the strained concentration and also a focus, fueled by worry, and the child is not going to do anything. That the resultant thing will be stress. A lot of tons and tons and tons of stress. So instead of that, if there is a flow in the child, and that flow can become some kind of a dynamic, so that kind of potential energy from within, where the child really embraces the knowledge and moves forward and actually explores himself. Schools talk about exploring knowledge, but actually exploration of the child himself or herself is the most important thing, which includes knowledge, which is very minuscule in nature. That is point number two. Point number three, when the situation is very challenging, why stress comes to us? We want to do something like a school, a teacher, a principal, a director, a manager, office. We want to do achieve this in 1 hour. The tragedy is that whatever you want to achieve, the resources that you have are not sufficient to achieve that. So you have not looked at your resource toolbox. Whatever you have to achieve, the resources, the climate, the time, your readiness, your psychic readiness, your physiological readiness, your emotional readiness, and your contact and integrity to the work that is at hand right now. That is also another most important point. And we are going through one kind of an incarcerated pain. The pain is we do compare. We do compare in economics, compare in luxuries with other people, comforts, the style of living, the revenue, the income, the health, the popularity, the power, etc., etc., etc. But instead of that, if you can start reframing that comparison, compare your positive feelings, qualities with the positive qualities of the other person. If you compare that, just that he is strong in this, he is a good academician, he is a good literator, he speaks well, whatever it is. And that comparison probably may give you some kind of, adaptability. That's another very important thing, I suppose. Then, when we come to this, because every minute I have seen, because this present moment is spoiled by millions and billions of people. The students in the class, the teachers in the class, the parents at home, politicians in the governance, people in the community, people in the highest echelons of the society. This is happening. So one small reflection that I do not want to spoil my present. Now I am enjoying the nature, let me enjoy. I am, talking to a child, let me enjoy that. I'm having my food for 10 minutes, I'm enjoying without any disturbance because I'm really loving that. And observing my breath, concentrate and focus on the breath, nothing else. So if you have the totality of complete fixation on that, on the plant, on the rose, whatever you call it, on the mountain or blue water, whatever it is, a small thing or a big thing, then probably you are not operating from your past experience or memory. Then you are living a full life in the present. When you accept that, you accept a small pain, a small loss in the present moment, that it has happened to me. Therefore, I have to accept it physically, psychologically, emotionally, intellectually, and of course, spiritually. Then nothing is going to harm anyone. One more thing before if you allow the stress to continue to build, and if you do not check that stress, it may lead you to depression. So to avoid that kind of a depression, please, when that stress is there, go out of that situation, go into a new situation, then you do that. Otherwise, if you are able to put up with the stress, understand the stress, observe the stress, and not becoming victimized because of the stress, then you are a winner. If you are not able to do that, at least the other take could be that you shift from that stress to the next opportune moment. Then of course you can come back later, where the present stress will not be able to harm you. This holds good for students, especially those who are preparing for competitive examinations like IIT JEE or medicine, whatever what is. That must go out of them. They should be able to love and enjoy the studies. The teacher should be able to love and enjoy. The parents also must be able to see the what you call the rhythm. And one last sentence I would say, we are all crazy of ranking the students, ranking. If you stop ranking and start identifying the talents in each child, what is the talent this child has got? If the school can cater to that kind of a talent of the child, probably we will be living our life very well. Thank you so much.
So I think I would like
You're not audible, sir.
To end with one question, which probably can be discussed at. Yeah. Why is it that my internet is very unstable? I'm sorry.
Now it's okay, sir.
Yeah. The question I would like to leave everybody with is, why is it that we want to become somebody or something? Maybe at some future session we could talk about it. This whole process of becoming. Why do we want to always become something?
So it may be apt to, recall what Krishnamurti said. The whole movement of life is learning. To me, that kind of captures all the aspiration of all the panelists we have heard. Can we be giving attention every moment, and the learning happens? What Gopalan suggested in the beginning. Is there any learning if it does not happen in the moment? And this little experiments, if you can do that, whenever you have learned something, or when you try to learn something, is learning even possible if your body, emotion, and mind are all healthy, and available in the moment. I've actually done those experiments. You deliberately try to learn something, even if there is a fraction of discomfort, dis-ease in the body or in the mind or in the heart, you are not in the moment. You cannot give attention to a note if you are learning a music or whatever you are trying to learn, and learning does not happen. So there is tremendous wisdom in this. The whole movement of life is learning. Can we be in attention and that our body, mind, and emotions are in sync every moment? That seems to have some clue to everything we have, suggested today.
We would want this discussion to go on and go on, but we're running out of time. And thank you very much, Gopalan sir, Prasad sir, Arvind sir, and Rajaram sir. Thank you so much for joining us, and everybody who's watching us on YouTube. Just would like to suggest, in case you want this live stream to be watched by your people in your contact, you can share the same link with your contacts, and it will be there on our YouTube channel. And anybody who's watching us on YouTube, if you do not want to miss the next videos or next live stream that we are coming up with, please subscribe to the channel so that you get the notification whenever we go live again or we upload any new video. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.